You're walking home late at night. The street is empty, no cars, no voices, just your own footsteps. And somewhere around the third silent block, your chest tightens for no clear reason. Nothing has happened. No one is there. But your body is already on alert, scanning shadows, listening a little too hard. You tell yourself you're being irrational. You're not. You are running one of the oldest alarm systems your species ever built. Because for most of human history, being alone outside the group wasn't just uncomfortable. It was close to a death sentence. Think about what a single human being actually is, physically. No claws worth mentioning, no armor, no real speed compared to almost anything hunting on the plains where your species evolved. On your own, you were slow, soft, and easy to kill. What changed that? Numbers. Other people, watching your back while you slept, sharing the work of finding food, warning you the second danger appeared. A lone human, out on the savannah, was a walking meal for anything with teeth. A group of humans, working together, was one of the most dangerous things on the continent. So evolution did something clever. It didn't just make cooperation useful, it made isolation feel unbearable. The social neuroscientist John Cacioppo spent much of his career studying exactly this. Cacioppo found that loneliness doesn't just make you feel sad, it changes your body at a biological level. Blood pressure rises, sleep gets worse, stress hormones stay elevated for longer, as if your nervous system genuinely believes you are in physical danger. That's not a coincidence. That's the alarm working exactly as designed. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between "no one is around to help me survive the night" and "I feel disconnected from my friends this week." Both trigger the same ancient circuitry. Both feel, on some level, like danger. Which raises an obvious question. How many people did your ancestors actually need around them to feel safe? The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades researching exactly that question. Comparing brain size across primate species, Dunbar found a striking pattern. The bigger the social group an animal typically lived in, the bigger the region of its brain devoted to processing relationships. For early humans, Dunbar calculated a rough upper limit, now widely known as Dunbar's number, of around 150 stable social relationships a single person's brain could realistically track and maintain. That number wasn't random. It matched almost perfectly with the size of small hunter-gatherer bands and early tribal communities uncovered by archaeologists. Your brain, in other words, was built for a village, not a city of millions, not a screen full of strangers. A village small enough that everyone knew your face, your voice, your role. Now, picture being cut out of that village. Not physically hurt, just excluded, left behind while everyone else moves on. In the ancestral world, exclusion from the group didn't just mean hurt feelings. It often meant facing predators alone, competing for food alone, healing from injury with no one to help you. Isolation and death were dangerously close neighbors. So your ancestors' brains learned to treat social rejection almost like physical pain, which is why, to this day, being excluded still hurts in a way that feels strangely physical. A tight chest, a sinking stomach. Researchers studying brain activity during experiences of social exclusion have found that many of the same neural regions involved in processing physical pain also activate during moments of rejection. Your brain, quite literally, doesn't always separate the two. Here's where it gets stranger. The anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy has spent years examining something unusual about human infants compared to other great apes. Unlike chimpanzee or gorilla babies, who are cared for almost entirely by their mothers alone, human infants historically relied on a much wider circle. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated group members. Hrdy argues that this shared caregiving, sometimes called cooperative breeding, may be one of the reasons humans became such intensely social creatures in the first place. You weren't just built to want company as an adult. You were built, from your very first days of life, to need a group of people around you just to survive infancy. Which means the fear of being alone isn't some modern weakness layered on top of a naturally independent species. It's closer to the opposite. Independence, real total independence, is the unnatural state for a human being. Connection is the default setting. So what happens to that ancient wiring in a world that has, in many ways, made isolation easier than ever? You can now work from home, order food without speaking to anyone, and go days without a face-to-face conversation, all while technically surrounded by more human beings than any generation in history. Cities packed with millions of strangers, screens full of familiar faces you've never actually met, and yet loneliness, real, self-reported loneliness, has been rising in many parts of the modern world for years. Public health researchers have started describing it almost like a physical health risk, comparable in some studies to smoking or obesity in its long-term effects on the body. And it's still trying after all this time to bring you back to the fire.